Today on At Your Service, we will be discussing the high school student wellness and community blocks. I'm Ryan Voegtlin, and my co-host Susan Love will be hosting the second half of the show today. During the first half of the show, we are going to discuss the high school student wellness block, and then during the second half of the show, we will discuss the high school community meeting block. My guests today are Dr. Elise Pass, Associate Scientist, Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health, and Mary Kay Connerton, the Wellness Coordinator at Annapolis High School. They're both part of the curriculum team for the high school student wellness block. Thank you both for joining us today. So could you please tell the viewers what the high school student wellness block is and the purpose of this block?
Absolutely. The high school student wellness block is a 25-minute block that all high school students are able to take on a weekly basis. And the class is organized so that we have 2 teacher leads, and we engage the students in meaningful conversation surrounding the theme of wellness. Wellness is the act of practicing healthy habits that connect to positive physical and mental outcomes. And our county wants our children to be exposed to the art of wellness because ultimately it will help to shape our children into becoming balanced adults that take part in wholehearted living.
Elise, could you tell us what is your role with the high school student wellness block and how you got connected?
Yeah, sure. So as you already mentioned, I work at the Johns Hopkins University and I do school-based research. And a few years ago, I had been talking with people at Anne Arundel County about an interest in this area and the need for content that could be delivered to high school students in particular. And so as part of a federally funded grant by the Institute of Education Sciences, I am able to partner with Anne Arundel County and on this really exciting and innovative work. So I've been involved since the beginning of when the student wellness block was added to the Anne Arundel calendar for youth in high schools. And I am part of the curriculum development team and help to lead the development of content that the students are seeing on that weekly basis in concert with you all and some other folks at Anne Arundel County.
Mary Kay, could you tell us what your role is also with
Yeah.
the high school student wellness block?
Yes, absolutely. So my role, similar to Elise in being a part of the rollout in regards to the lesson writing and the curriculum development, I meet with my team weekly to engage in how we're going to execute each session. And I got wrapped into this role due to the fact that I have started a wellness program at Annapolis High School. Yoga and mindfulness have been a great passion of mine. And about 10 years ago, I started a little grassroots project with instilling these practices, which then eventually evolved into the wellness program at Annapolis High. So when this initiative went into action, I was contacted by Student Services to offer support where needed. So it has been quite the journey, and I'm honored to be a part of the team.
She's also an integral part of the content that's facing forward to students and teachers all over the county. They've all seen her face and heard her voice almost every week, or maybe every week.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is true too.
Great.
So I should, yes, thank you, Elise. I should add how specifically, besides reviewing the content and adding in other pieces of information that connect to it, I also give tips on mindfulness with our mindful moment, which is offered with every session. We have a distinct flow, so that way our students and teachers can really know what's coming next, and they feel like this is more of a weekly ritual. And I also will provide insight onto how we can engage students better.
What does the research say about why we should be providing students at high school the opportunity to engage in social emotional learning and student wellness? What's the research behind that?
There are so many benefits for social emotional learning. In particular, this has been studied over the course of decades at this point. And these are far-reaching elements. As Mary Kay already mentioned, these are promoting the skills that connect with physical and mental outcomes. And so what the research says is that youth who develop these emotional competencies, things like self-awareness, social awareness, the ability to kind of regulate and cope with their feelings and communicate effectively and make responsible decisions really transcends for putting youth on a positive path for life. So some of the things that we see, even when we look at young kids with these skills, we see just better outcomes with graduation rates. We see links with mental health, and mental health is a major predictor of later kind of challenges or growth and positivity. So we're trying to kind of give kids the skills to really face different challenges that they maybe already are experiencing or might experience later. And this is particularly important for high school students, because when we think about mental health specifically, that's when we also see the emergence of so many challenges for students. It's around the age of 14, so right around that age of changing to high school. And so the longer term things we see are better graduation rates, better college enrollment or completion or career success, more positive relationships with others. And then kind of at the larger scale, when we think about society, we think about people who are more engaged citizens in our country, right, have better employment opportunities and have the ability to kind of give back. And the other thing about it is that this is not just what the research says. When we ask young people and teachers and principals and parents, people really are positive about having this as a focus as part of academic learning. These different groups see the benefits of this on students, and even for teachers. There's even some research that shows that when we implement this in schools for kids, teachers also benefit. And teachers really have said pretty clearly that they believe that this is an important focus of education.
Elise, that was the perfect segue, because I would love to add how just in my own personal data collection over the past 10 years, time and time again, I have students reporting that they feel more confident, that they are able to cope with stress more. So their stress level may be still high, but the difference is they now have the toolbox with them to know what to pull out to cope with that stress. I also have students reporting that they are better at sleeping. They have increased flexibility in their thinking and in the way that they perceive things. And my favorite is there are time and time again, we see an increase in empathy and how a child can then feel more respect for not only themselves, but then for another. And so a lot of my anecdotal data continues to point to that. And same with surveys that I take for my teachers, both at Annapolis High and at different workshops that I lead across the county. So overall, I really feel that this helps to transform our students to become resilient. And that's what we really need in today's world. As we talk to you during a pandemic for this amazing interview opportunity.
Great, thank you. That really helped me understand the research and why this is important. So tell me about the high school student wellness block for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. How has it been structured, and how was it developed? And as we moved into the school year.
So Mary Kay actually talked about this a little bit. So it is delivered weekly. It started off where there was content available 2 times per week in the beginning of the school year, and then moved to 1 time in the week. And Mary Kay also mentioned that the content is structured within a deck of slides that are available for teachers to use, and they have a repeated flow. And that is really to get a routine and a regularity and a predictability, because we know that students really do best when things are kind of predictable and consistent, and helps them really be available to access the information. We try to, what we always have is either a mindful or a mindless moment to start. Mindful moments include mindfulness, like breathing activities. Mindless moments are meant to be a little bit lighter and just kind of help connect the kids with either something funny together or with each other. We do a little bit of a review from the prior session, so that there's a little bit of continuity. We talk about that in education as like generalizability. So they kind of learn about it in one setting, and then they can kind of try to generalize it and try to use it or talk about it at least one more time. And then we kind of have the content, and we do different activities to present the content. Sometimes it's videos, sometimes it's the teacher sharing information through visuals. There's always discussion questions, and we're really trying to encourage students to engage in discussions, share their ideas, ask their questions. And then we always close out with a practice idea for, now that we just worked on this, think about this until the next time, and then we review it again in the next session.
Mary Kay, what do you think have been the benefits of the high school student wellness block for students?
Okay, so two words that come to mind are awareness and then inspiration. So ultimately, I believe just from being placed at a school right now that students are now being exposed to, hey, wellness is a thing. And this is how we practice it. And it's okay if you feel like this, and it's okay if you feel like that. And so we're building their ability to really tap into what's going on within. Because ultimately, if we're not aware of our own being and what's going on inside, then how are we going to be able to process the world around us, right? So I think that has been huge. And then that has really wrapped into my second word, which is inspiration, because I see this drive and this passion that has been ignited across the county for students to become involved in these sessions and to say, wait a minute, we just had a session on, greater opportunities for a greater cause, and I want to be able to help make an impact and make change. Or we've had students who are saying, I love your yoga in the mindful moments. Can I connect some of my music with it so that we can have a collaborative project together? So for me, it's been a really amazing thing that has just unfolded, and I feel it's been kind of a light in this time in virtual learning for a lot of our students and staff members.
Great. So, and then on the other hand, Elise, what do you think have been some of the challenges of putting this block in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always going to be both sides of the coin. And so I think on the one hand, we are seeing a lot of inspiration and excitement about the fact that Anne Arundel County has prioritized this important topic, both by teachers and students. But some of the challenges is that not everybody feels as connected. And some of that is that virtual learning is challenging, just kind of across the board, and how we get engagement. This is new for a lot of schools, most of the schools. So the students aren't totally familiar with this. They're used to kind of their teachers teaching them about math or social studies, but they're not used to something like this. And that goes for the teachers as well. So there's a process, right? There has to be kind of the expectation of some of these bumps. And so there are definitely the challenges of how do you really make this engaging? How do you make it accessible for teachers and students in a way that's authentic, that matches what they're interested in, but also is kind of consistent across the county? And so those are some of the challenges that we've been faced with and continue to seek input on and try to respond to.
Great. And just kind of to wrap it up, if I could get both of you to answer this question, as we move forward with the high school student wellness blocks, what would you like to see? How would you like to see that block evolve? We'll start with Mary Kay.
So tying back to kind of what I was saying before with how this has kind of sparked students to want to become more engaged within the sessions, I really see this evolving to not just be where it's our team, Elise and myself and our other members, and then the teachers, but I see really big student engagement coming, and that's really what I ultimately want to manifest, is to have have the teachers, the students, the community be in partnership here, because then we'll just have one big healthy community then.
Great. How about you, Elise?
I couldn't agree more. And I think another part of that is really providing some additional supports to teachers. And so that's something we've been working on already in terms of resources, but really getting kind of more of a grassroots approach where we could provide support to schools so that they can really make this their own and run with it. Because I think there are so many great ideas that have come in through surveys anonymously from teachers and students about ways they want to see this continue to move. And I think that's where the evolution would be great, is to see more of that ownership at the teacher and student level, and then kind of building that building culture. I was kind of alluding to that. It takes time to get comfortable with this kind of content. So letting them really drive that bus, I think, would be a nice way to see the block evolve with time. And I think people are ready for it and are excited for it.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise for our audience today. It is so appreciated, and I know everyone's learned from what you've talked about today. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Coming up next on At Your Service, Susan Love will talk with two dedicated educators, Megan Lewis and Kathy Rockeffeller, who have been integral in the development and implementation of the high school community meeting block for AACPS students.
Welcome back to At Your Service. Today, we are joined by Ms. Megan Lewis, Coordinator of Behavioral Supports and Interventions, and Ms. Kathy Rockeffeller, AACPS Climate Support Specialist. We will be discussing Community Meeting Block. Thank you for joining me today. In the first part of the program today, Mr. Voegtlin discussed the purpose of Student Wellness Block and the programmatic features related to that block. So thank you, ladies, for joining me today. We're in the virtual world today, so it's going to be a learning curve for both of us, or all of us. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks. So can you please tell the viewers what Community Meeting Block is and the purpose of the block?
Sure. Community Meeting Block is a time on Wednesday for high schools where students are able to gather in a group that they meet with most likely Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and have some time together to build community with their teacher that they are assigned. And it is designed to really do that, to create community and to also learn about their school. There's an opportunity for each school to create school-based lessons during that time to keep them connected to their community while we're virtual.
So is this, I'm going to go off a little bit. Is this something that's new for Anne Arundel County Public Schools, this Community Meeting Block?
Yes, for it to be in every high school and structured like this, that is new. Most high schools prior to virtual or e-learning were doing something called advisory, where they would meet potentially once or twice a week or potentially once a month. It was scheduled differently at each high school. So it varied. This is the first, this structure and this consistency is new for Anne Arundel.
Okay, so what are your roles within this Community Meeting Block?
So we meet with the Student Wellness Committee, who I think you heard from before this, and we stay in contact with them to see what they're doing and how those lessons go. And then Kathy and I, our role is to really look at the community building circle time. And Kathy, I'll let you speak a little bit more about that because I know you are the circle lady. So, and the expert, and has been training schools for about 5 years now in restorative practices, and that's where community building circles falls. And so Kathy and I just kind of try to keep it some continuity between the student wellness block and the community meeting, and we serve as points of contact for anybody who is rolling out or implementing community building circles, and the points of contact for each school for the student wellness and community meeting time. So talking to you, Kathy, about the community.
Yeah, I would say that in the high schools with the community building circles, when we went virtual, only about half of our high schools were trained so far in community building circles. So those who were trained are conducting them during that time, and those who weren't are using a bank of other community building activities that they could do, games, things like that with their students. And we have a plan to have all high schools trained within the next probably year, right, Megan? I mean, it's all gotten changed because of COVID, but I think we're going to be able to do it within the year.
That's awesome. So I see you have a nickname, Miss Circle.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
the
what
circle
you're
lady.
known for now in Anne Arundel County?
Yeah,
Circle lady.
yeah, that's
It's
me.
not a bad nickname.
I may as well embrace it.
Exactly. So what does research say about the community building circles?
So the research on restorative practices is national research in schools is kind of scant. I wish it was not. However, and in particular, because sometimes some of the studies have tried to research whether the responsive circles, which are circles done to address harm or help with conflict, whether those circles work. And then other times the research is whether community building circles work. And sometimes it's both. And we're finding even in our schools that, sometimes one takes off and the other doesn't. And we're working to get both elements of restorative practices in every school. But with regard to your question about community building circles, what we are seeing in the little research that there is if you look at the RAND study of Pittsburgh schools, which was just 2 years ago, it just came out, and that's the largest public school sort of urban and suburban setting of study that's been done with controls, randomized controls and things like that. And what that study concluded is that restorative practices, whether it's just community building circles or just responsive circles or both, have been successful in bringing down suspension rates. I mean, quite successful. They've also been successful in helping with school climate, teachers feeling like the climate is good, students answering surveys that say that they feel more connected to school, et cetera. And so that is great for us to see. More anecdotally, they have been connected with increase in attendance, which has been exciting. And let's go back again to the discipline piece. When the school discipline numbers have come down, suspensions have come down. Not only have they come down, but there's less days per suspension, and there's less students repeating the suspensions, and they're less likely to go to an alternative ed school. So we're finding that discipline-wise, that's really not in question at all. The only thing that honestly has not, there's two things that people were hopeful about, and I was too with restorative practices. I still am, but the studies are inconclusive on whether they help academic performance and also whether they help decrease disparities between students of color, students with special needs, and other students. So, but it's still growing field. It's doing great.
So how long has really this field, you said it's pretty new, so in the last 10 years, so there's not a lot of research, but it's really starting to move with this particular study.
That's right. That is the largest study, but I would say more than 10 years, more like 20. But the last 10 is when research has begun, and it's a nettlesome task to research this and to get conclusions around it. There are so many pieces, like, if a child participates in a circle, to help them understand why he shouldn't have knocked over a desk in front of a teacher, and then he is suspended later, or she, because of doing something else. Does that mean that circle didn't work? Was that unsuccessful?
Right.
There's just so many pieces that it is a tricky thing to do, but they have found that the community building circles, which is what we're embracing in our high schools at this point, are successful in bringing down suspensions and making people feel like the climate is better.
Well, and Kathy, I love the line too about the more connected you are, the less likely you are to harm, right? So the more we hear each other's stories and the more we have the time to listen to each other's experiences, the more connected we'll be. And that's really the start of that community building circle, is the start of that. And then the restorative mindset, as you always say, seeps in, right? And then that
philosophy seeps in.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk a little bit about the high school, that's the whole community meeting block. But what is happening at the elementary and middle school? So
our elementary schools are doing community building circles. There's only maybe, I don't know, Megan, maybe 15 more schools that need to be trained in those elementary schools. All the other ones are doing them. They're doing them at least 3 times a week, if not every day. The middle schools tend to be, all but one of our middle schools is using community building circles and have been now for a while. They're kind of our stars right now. And they have, well, I don't know, the elementary schools, well, anyway. The middle schools are generally doing community building circles 3 times a week. And then they're doing social emotional learning lessons, which in my day were called advisory lessons, the other 2 days a week. It's kind of like they learn about the skill, and then they get a chance to practice it, which is an awesome combo, right?
Right. Because I think sometimes, like, for social emotional learning, they think it's all about talking about it, but there's not the practice piece. So this is just in the perfect relationship between social emotional learning and then being able to put it into practice, especially for the little ones, because usually it's what skill are they missing, right?
Yes,
and what are the words, because they don't have the words. Even middle schoolers might not. I even know some high schoolers don't have the words. So, but it's really an opportunity for that engagement. So what would be the best practice or structure for a circle?
The structure for a circle is very clear. You need to be physically in a circle. All the chairs need to be the same size, not have a table between you. And you use a talking piece or a talking stick, whatever you want to call it. You pass it from person to person sequentially around the circle. And then the person who's the keeper, which is usually the teacher in the beginning, that circle keeper will ask the question and then they answer. So the kids get to hear the teacher's answer too. So they get to learn something about their teacher. That's an important piece of this. And then they pass the talking piece around. Everyone gets the answer. And the guidelines just say, when you have it, you're invited to talk. When you don't have it, you're invited to listen. Just really important with our kids. And then you're always allowed to pass with no judgment. It's fine.
Okay. What are what would be a question?
Megan, do you have a favorite one? I know you do.
I was like, oh, this is my favorite thing, because I joke with Kathy that, because we do that with staff, obviously. It's community building. It can be done just adults. It can be adults and students. It's great. And when it is successful, some of the students will say, get that talking piece. We need to do one of these. Like,
I love it.
But I always mull over my answers. I'm like, I should have said this. I wish I would have said this after every circle, but I can ask that question again. So some of my favorites were, we know the would you rather be, those are big hits. So would you rather have spaghetti arms or bowling ball feet?
Right. Middle schoolers love those.
Yes. There's one we just did was, what is a trait you have that would make others say you're a warrior? And then there's some that are as simple as, what is your favorite, right? Like, what is your favorite thing to do on a snowy day? Just thinking.
And then, and then there's other questions, things like, what's one thing you wish all teachers knew about students? You can really learn a lot from your kids about things like that with asking questions like that.
And they're safe.
Yes, they have to be safe, right? And when you first build these communities, you keep it always very, very light. And actually, you can keep it always very, very light forever. And that connection is still helpful for their school experience and for school safety. But then you can get into deeper questions, but you never start with a deep question. And that's why the training is so important.
Right, definitely. It sounds, I love the questions, and I do that at the dinner table with my would you rather, at the dinner table with your kids, just
it should be fun
conversation, and you do find things out instead of just asking them, how was your day?
I know.
Okay, it's the same. So we did that when we were kids.
Right.
So you talked a little bit about benefits of engagement, but what are some other, do you feel, are major benefits for this community meeting time?
So the community meeting time, I think, and Kathy kind of touched on this, we are in our society right now, we do a lot of talking, and she mentions this a lot, and it's an opportunity to listen, and we don't always have that, and it's protected time to listen as well. And the virtual world specifically right now, we know how important it is to connect, and we also know connection is changed. What we think of how connection typically looks like, I have to be face to face and I have to be interacting. Our thinking has shifted around that, right? I can hear stories and I can interact and I can still be a part of a community during this time. And it's protected time in the high school schedule for that, because we aren't having those natural transitions because we aren't in person. So this is protected time for us to be able to build that community. And it's also protected time for a school community that has its own unique needs and has its own unique lessons or pieces that you might not know because you're not in the school every day. This is an opportunity for each school to give their own unique spin on their community and that time to build their school community as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, we have to thank our leaders because they were really on the forefront of this movement, which is now pretty much a national movement. And that is to say, you know what, it's worth it to push back a little time and space just to build connections, just to build relationships. It matters, because what we were finding is that our kids were getting to high school. They had no idea how to have a conversation back and forth because they had spent the last 4 years texting. Things are just really different. So we as a school system said, yeah, I know this might not go directly to test scores. However, it does go towards our building a whole human being and our becoming a connected and safe community. If you think of stories about terrible school tragedies, you always hear that the person who did the tragedy was a loner, not very connected. And that really stings with me, and I think about that a lot. And it's really important. We don't want anybody slipping through the cracks. Having this opportunity built into the day is super valuable.
And I agree with you. I'm always of the auspices of Maslow before Bloom, to be honest with you, as a student service advocate for students. And if you can't meet kids where they are, the learning is not going to happen. So they really need those skills and to feel those connections and those relationships. It just is imperative, So, and I know that you both agree wholeheartedly. And I love that. I heard that the other day and I was like, makes so much sense, So what have been some of the challenges, do you think, as implementing Circle and this community meeting block during this time?
Megan, you go for this one.
So during the virtual learning, the challenge is shifting to virtual, right? Like I'm used to sitting in a circle, I'm used to having a setup, I'm used to being able to pass a talking piece. There can be a little bit of a barrier with it being virtual, right? Like how do we do the order when we're not directly in front of each other? So the circle keeper has to really, keep that going. And sometimes you can lose the stories when you're trying to deal with the technical glitches, I guess is the word that I hear everybody's using. I just watched Wreck-It Ralph this weekend, and apparently there's a little glitch in there, and I learned that's what kids say. So I'm super hip now. So that's the technical pieces of it, and then I think also the attendance, since it is a time that is not officially an attendance is taken, but it doesn't count towards grades, right? So with the demands of virtual learning, so the feedback we've gotten from students is it's hard to stay and show up on a day where I could be getting other work done. So again, as Kathy was saying, we are protecting this time, and this is really great that we've had this, but we also need to shift the mindset of this is as important as your GPA, as your grades. And sometimes we're not quite there because students are like, I have all this work to do, I need to get it done. I don't really want to tell you what my favorite thing to do on a snowy day is, right? I need to have work done. So that's been a challenge. What we have seen though is that we have points of contact, and they may have mentioned this in the other segment, but at each school, and they've done a wonderful job with really being purposeful about putting questions out, helping the circle keepers, if they are trained in community building, to really know what those are ahead of time. And then schools that aren't trained in community building circles, still choosing a fun game, giving student voice as much as possible. And there is continuity between the student wellness and community meetings. So the more feedback we're getting, the more we're changing to make it what students want to show up for. And a lot of a lot of circle keepers are saying that sometimes the circle is all they do in that time because students just want to talk. So there are barriers, and there's have been some, but the ways around that have been to get student voice to try to make it more purposeful and more meaningful for them.
Yeah, there is another barrier that I want to share that's more virtual than anything else. And that is that a lot of times our students want to keep their cameras off. And keeping your camera off, while it's certainly, we're not going to force students to turn their cameras on. And yet we know that when we're building relationships, the language, facial expressions and things like that makes such a difference in getting to know people without masks on, and getting to, you know, see what they're like and hear when they laugh and have the whole group laugh together sometimes. That's how you build a community. And when you mute and unmute and you keep your video camera off, it's tricky. So one challenge we've been looking at lately is, you know, what would make kids more likely to turn on their camera? They can change their background. They don't have to show where they are. They can keep that privacy. So we're working on that. We'll see how that goes.
Well, thank you. Ladies, thank you very much for joining me today on At Your Service. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank the viewing audience, and see you next time.